This is Jude Trapani, founder of Zero Point Tai Chi. And I have today my friend and colleague, David Wetton from the UK. David and I have been sharing quite a bit about bringing more conscious connection into our uh, all aspects of our lives. We've talked about our work lives, our personal lives, our relationships, our vision of ourselves. We've gone down the spiritual path and shared some of our experiences, and I'm really happy today to be here with David and share some concepts about bringing the consciousness that you can grow from doing activities like Tai Chi and Qigong and meditation and bringing this greater awareness to lots of aspects of life, including our work world. And so, welcome, David. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a piece of this journey that you've been on over maybe the past 10 years or so?
Thanks, Jude. Yes, I think it is probably about, I guess in some ways, you're probably, most of my working life when I look back now, but probably in a very sort of deeply conscious way. I think it's been 15 years. And something that came to me recently, Jude, I'm not sure if I've shared this with you or not, but the word that came to mind for what I'm doing around conscious leadership is alchemist. And what I mean by that is that actually, when I looked it up, an alchemist is someone who transforms things for the better. And I had a sense that's what I'm about really in business, to actually help leaders, conscious leadership teams, or teams, leadership teams, to actually not only deliver to their bottom line, traditional profit one, but also, we talk about a triple bottom line, Jude, about, it's not just the profit, it's also people and it's planet. So, from a people perspective, and I've been speaking about relationship intelligence, how to really deliver as a leadership team. And I've kind of realized, actually, I've spent, as you said, I spent 15 years traveling the world, really being at this cutting edge of research and practice with conscious leadership, understanding it, learning it, developing it, and embodying, for me, what is its transformational power. So I know that I actually literally do have a sack full of tried and tested conscious leadership tools. And so I actually love working with organizations and teams where I can actually transform their results with existing clients and help them actually really inspire them to take on new challenges, to make creative differences as they move forward in the future. And my sense is as well that these people in this area are not just about making a difference now, they really have a passion for making the world a better place for generations to come. So that's really the place that I work with. It's those leadership teams that are really interested in exploring more about, I think, yes, the work is important that I'm doing at work, and we have to earn a profit in order to be sustainable. But moreover, what am I actually doing at work? How am I being at work? You and me have spoken about this being aspect in the workplace, and I just think that's really important. So we'll speak in a little while, but you spoke about the practices. I think that's the exciting thing. You do it with your 0 Point Tai Chi, but there are so many great potential practices out there. And I think one of my skills is almost being like, I'm based in the UK, but it's like when we go into our, say, hospitals here, we see a triage nurse, when he or she can actually assesses where you are and makes recommendations as to where you go. And I'm kind of almost like a triage conscious leadership presence, that as they speak to me, I get a sense of, okay, let's have a look at these tools. Or if there was an instance where I said, presence, Jude could really help, I can bring you in over the internet and say, is this, and I am blessed. I should use that word blessed, because some of the people that I talk about, it's not just that I've read their material, majority of them I've also met them in person. And so I've had a real sense of, again, the depth of their journey with the tools they're bringing and the ones that I then bring to the table. So there's like an embodied presence, if that makes sense, Jude. And then there's an excitement of not quite bringing them into a room. That might sound a little bit woo-woo, but it's a sense of actually, I'm bringing this process or this tool because I may know, in this case, I'm looking at a book here, Professor Jody Fry, but I also know his passion for this subject. I know how many hours he's put into creating this particular tool, and for it to make a difference with you and your team, how fantastic is that?
I really like that. When David and I first started talking about this, it really resonated for me because my work as a government biologist for 30 years brought me to a whole series of teams. And my mentor and teacher in the work world, his name was David too. And he really opened my eyes to teaming in a way that I never knew was possible. And I realized that these fundamental concepts of working in teams, like mutual respect and listening and being open in lots of different ways to lots of different ideas, cultural ways, all sorts of stuff, brought people together in a much more successful way, but also a much more enjoyable way. And one thing that we did during my time there was we would have Monday staff meetings, and we would rotate the facilitation of about 30 people. And so that was interesting in itself to put a whole bunch of different people in this role of basically managing the hour-long meeting. And I watched people be grumpy going to Monday morning staff meetings, like, what a waste of time. I don't want to listen to these people. And I thought, well, what would I do when it's my turn? So I volunteered a number of times to do this, and I thought, okay, what I can bring is to try to get people out of this grumpy state. How would I do that? So I opened up, okay, welcome everybody, and let's all stand up and take a deep breath and raise our arms up. And I was doing Qigong exercises just once. And then drop your hands, take another deep breath, and just relax, and let's sit down and start. And I couldn't believe the positive feedback that I got after the first time I did it. Like, wow, I'm so glad that we did that because, it made me feel better. And I noticed that even in the future, other people would stop and, okay, let's all take a breath here. Let's connect as a team. And I thought, wow, these little things of bringing this different consciousness versus the victim consciousness, like rah 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 rah, I don't want to be here, I don't like it. The question keeps coming back to the adept, the spiritual adept. What do you do with your life? Do you just do we all become free wanderers and just wear a loincloth and go down to the tropics and find God? How do you bring that into everyday life and keep your life? What does that look like? And many of us spend a real big portion of our life in our work world. Can we bring this consciousness to the work world? And to connect with you, David, and to see you working on this and working with teams to grow a more awareness in our business practices is just really excited me when we first started talking about it.
And it's helpful, Jude, I think, from my perspective, just to put some context around it, because those who are watching and listening, quite often, because we hear conscious or whatever, or we've been speaking about spiritual and bringing the spiritual into the workplace, what I want to kind of strip back on that is that I've done the research here. Did a master's at Durham University Business School, one of the top business schools here in the UK. And my thesis was on exploring the role of spirituality in the workplace. And why I bring this word up, because you and me will use, conscious or spirituality. Quite often, anyway, here in the UK, I think it's the same. I've spent quite a bit of time in the States, in California, particularly San Francisco, that sometimes, quite often I should say, when people say spiritual, from a Western Christian perspective, people think you're about to whip out a Bible and you're about to get them to get on their knees and give their lives to Jesus. And it's not like that at all on the research perspective, and it's definitely not like that in an embodied perspective. And quite often when I have these sorts of conversations, what I say to people on definitions I like, and as a woman, Georgianne Lamont, who I know here in the UK, and one of her definitions is that, first of all, she says spirituality is not religion. So almost like we're talking about breaths, when I say that, people then almost take a breath out and go, oh, thank goodness for that. I'm not going to be hit by I have to do this, that, and the other. Then she says it's not about beliefs, creeds, or dogmas. And there's another out breath that goes, well, that's a relief. But she says it is about being fully alive, relationships, and that which gives meaning and purpose to life, which I just really love. And it ties in when I did my research. There's some academic researchers that talk about operationalized or practical spirituality having three components. One around an inner life, which you and me have been talking about, but that helps you become or feel fully alive. Then about meaningful work, which we spoke about before the call, that actually you're doing work that gives meaning and purpose, not only to your life, but lives of hopefully hundreds and possibly thousands and millions of others. And then actually the third component is community, i.e. relationships, which is why I speak about relationship intelligence, because I think that is just so important. So when you put those into place around spirituality, to say actually it's what's alive in you, and straight away I see the Tai Chi perspective. The example you just gave of the breath actually says, well, I'm alive, I'm present, and if it's got meaning and purpose, well, this is important to me. And when I'm working in teams, so there's relationships, the community is important. I want to actually, have a sense of being understood in this team and being appreciated and feeling that I belong. And quite often these are things that can be stepped over in the world of commerce. And it's my understanding that when you bring these fully present, as we say in the UK, you name the elephant in the room and say, actually, these are really important for us. People then will actually gather around these things and go, actually, you're not telling me anything new. I knew this. I know this deep in my body, but actually I've never been given permission to bring my whole self to work. And that was one of the aspects that got me into researching this area of sort of spirituality in the workplace, which I've now taken to call conscious leadership. This aspect of giving people permission to bring their full selves to work. And it's, as you know, Jude, it literally frees up energy because they're not having to put a cap on, well, I dare talk about this or mention that I'm interested in that, or I have this skill, this talent, because I might not be accepted. It's like, no, actually, we accept you for who you are. And then suddenly they're having conversations that mean something to them, that really connect into their deepest heartfelt place. And surprise, surprise, they're more productive in the workplace. They're more creative. They've got more of a sense of making a difference in the workplace because they really feel the workplace, the organization, but more importantly, their colleagues are willing to see them and understand them. And there's such a great gift in that, I think. So, that is really important. So we'll speak in a second, that then the conscious practices, as I said before, Tai Chi being one of them, there are so many that can be brought in to organizations at a kind of level or in a way that it resonates with that leadership group. It can be something as simple, Jude, as I've got this book I've got one here called The Trusted Executive. I'm just going to read half a page from it on something that's really interesting to me. And they may well just start the meeting with that, because then it gets a conversation going, which just opens it up. So actually, when they get down to perhaps their business for the day, they bring a more fuller sense of who they are, because they've engaged with something which has literally touched something in them, has opened them up to a greater sense. And I do the Trusted Executive podcast. And in there, we were talking the other week about being honest in the workplace. And what a fabulous conversation that was with John Blakey, who does that. But you can imagine that, just reading that bit out of his book in a meeting, you suddenly have a conversation about what does it mean to be honest in this organization, which is hardly ever spoken about. And again, people can move into this space. And my experience is it then expands the presence of the whole group, because they suddenly realize it's okay to speak about this and perhaps name some areas where we feel uncomfortable, and we're not going to be waxed down and told that this isn't acceptable. We're actually being open to and honest about having conversations. So there's a tremendous freeing power, and you know, I'm interested from your perspective, you know, what that means for you around the body and the Tai Chi perspective.
Yeah, great question. I've thought a lot about this. And, you know, the last big government agency I worked for had a lot of engineers. And I realized that engineers are trained to be very stoic and very analytical, and they rarely take deep breaths because it's all just kind of stuck up here, you know? And what I learned in the workplace is that the managers would once in a while get disappointed in a work product from one of the engineers. And before they would talk to them about it, they would write up a negative review and put it in their permanent work file. And I had never heard of this before working for other government agencies. And the everyday engineer in there was talking about how terrible it made them feel and how detrimental it potentially was for their career. And I thought, what brought this government agency culture to the place where they wouldn't literally talk to their employees about what kind of work they're doing and help them through a difficulty? And I'm still a little flabbergasted by that one. And I thought to myself, wow, this is really interesting. And it taught me to deepen my connection with the people that I work with in that honest dialogue, to where we can feel very comfortable sitting down, no matter what our title was or our position, and just have that frank discussion, because ultimately we share the same goals. We want to do our mission, or you know, whatever it might be. And if we don't have the same goals, we should talk about that, and then maybe we need a change. But I think honest communication is a big part of this whole concept of bringing conscious awareness to the workplace. What do you think about that?
And absolutely agree. And I think when you said, you kind of jumped something, I think it's really valuable, we don't want to lose in this conversation. And that is that, you know, working in the organization, that team, we all have a shared goal. And, you know, we're not to lose sight of that. And I think one of the best projects I did, which was in Barclays Bank, a big, massive company here in the UK, was I worked across the bank looking to get this project launched. It involved working across very many different departments. And what was the key for me is when they understood actually this was a bigger shared goal than any single department, and there was budget available for it as well, they suddenly got, oh yeah, I'm in for this. Because we then came together with a shared goal, as opposed to arguing about how can this be done from a technical perspective. Once we understood the shared goal was bringing in a lot of income for Barclays, and they would be part of this, they were like, yeah, I'm in for this. So that's really important, because I think what I heard someone say this week is that we hold different stories. They said, actually, the comment was, you never fight over content, It's more over your perception and the stories that you're holding. So this open communication where both sides are allowed to bring their stories to the table, quite often there is then a transformation when they both share the two stories, because they realize the truth, the elements of truth in the other story, and quite often it moves to a third kind of shared story because they realize they're both holding fragments of the truth for them. But if you, as you said, if you don't share that, if you don't have that communication to share those stories, to share those understandings, it goes in a file and it's written down, and the person that picks it up says, well, that's not what I meant, or that's not the story I have. So, and I think that's what we were talking about in the previous conversation, this aspect of this psychological safety. I feel safe to share my story about this. And even if I share it as David and there's Mary or there's Frank who has a different story, we can actually sit down and listen to each other's stories. And understanding we have a big shared goal here, but within this, what's happening? What are we actually coming to? Where's the, even if the word conflict or disagreements, because actually this is the strange thing. Once you get into these, this disagreement, this conflict can be actually wildly creative. We've spoken about it before, it can release energy, because actually that's the thing, isn't it, Jude? And another interesting one, I guess, for when we're talking about being conscious, and it's not very often spoke about. When we come to work, we'll come to work as our, whatever it is, 30, 40, 50-year-old or whatever age we are. But we're bringing in tow, quite often on a sack on our back, our childhood stories. So again, when we're having these conversations and we feel like we're in part of conflict, it's never just the other person there that's the sole thing. In fact, some research said it might be only 5% of them. 95% is the story you're carrying in your backpack. So actually, as you said, when you come to the workplace, actually it's a place, and there is a book called, I think, A Healing Organization. It's a place to actually realize and be conscious that perhaps the way you're feeling triggered to this particular person has actually nothing to do with what they're doing at the moment. It's triggering some stuff in your backpack. So this aspect of being aware, and you hear in conscious leadership, this aspect of not just presence, but how am I self-aware? What am I bringing to it? What am I hearing? What am I understanding? And can I put a pause in? I think that's where Tai Chi helps. And just this last week, I was working with a group where we spoke of the transformational power of actually when you feel triggered, so there's a disagreement or you don't agree with something, as you said, of taking a breath. And then I was actually introducing the concept, which they really liked, of choosing, because I think it is a choice, then choosing to be conscious and choosing to respond as opposed to react. Because we say over here, reacting is just taking the petrol or the gasoline can and pouring it over a flaming fire. It's just going to go higher. Whereas if you can choose to respond, you've actually then introduced the possibility of not just containing that fire, but actually transforming it. Because I think we both know, this anger, and we've spoken a lot about this, anger or if there's disagreement, it's got this fire, it's got transformational value in it. It's there for a purpose. And if we can choose, again, to learn from that transformational purpose, just think how different organizations would be. Because in my experience, they just kind of put a lid on it, as we say, and put it in the corner. And it's still burning and it's still causing trouble, but no one kind of wants to speak to it because it's off the record, so to speak. No, we don't talk about that. That's part of the culture, the way we do things around here. So I think part of this conscious practices or conscious leadership is actually saying, do you know what? You see those boxes that we put in the corner? We're going to start hauling some of those into the center of the room and lifting the lid on them. Not to shame, blame, and criticize people, but just actually in an honest way to say, actually, in this box is a tremendous amount of energy, creativity, something that can make a great difference to this organization. Yes, it can be as scary as hell to lift the lid off it, but as long as we've got, if we need it, some support to hold that, it's going to make such a huge difference to this leadership team and to the organization.
I thank you for that. I totally agree. And I think that if an organization is interested in this type of mindset, I'll say, it's to me, it's so worth the risk of honest communication being uncomfortable and difficult, soon this will just be second nature. One one of the one of the things that one of the reasons why I say that is because if you keep putting the lid on things and don't have honest communication, the business or the agency is eventually going to lose the best people. There, that's just what I've seen is the real amazing employees or leaders. They're going to go find some other place to work that does have honest communication and is really teaming. And one of the things that um, dawned on me while you were talking is that I keep going into these parallels of Tai Chi and Qigong and Taoism and the everyday practice, the everyday Tai Chi is when you're what how are you holding yourself? So the physical body is a nice reflection about what's going on mentally and emotionally. So, a lot of us are all wound up tight. We got a big backpack on full of stuff, just like you were talking about. And, then the person drives to work and they get upset and they come into work with this, disposition. And how are they going to have an honest conversation? And so I find that all these practices, whether it's just breathing or something more involved like meditation or Tai Chi, yoga, going to the gym in the morning, going for a run, going for a swim, going for a walk, walking your pet, whatever it might be, brings us back into this. Oh, you have perspective, and all of a sudden your shoulders start to drop because you're doing something that you're enjoying. Your jaw starts to relax, and you can come into the business world with a different mindset. You can come in and really have that honest conversation. And that's one thing that I try to portray in my classes is how do you take this and do Tai Chi in everyday life? How do you wash the dishes with a relaxed hand? And I've caught myself this way. Recently, my wife and daughter and I were cooking supper, and my daughter's 14, and I've basically trained her in a lot of this consciousness stuff. And she came up to me and she said, "Daddy, you're cutting the vegetables, but your fist is clenched and you have tension." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you." And she'll come up to me and she said, "Why is your brow all furrowed?" You because I'm looking at something, and I'm got the face on and and so it's such a gift for those little things because I think that those little things really build a foundation for bringing this consciousness into the work world, into your relationships, all sorts of things in life. Have you found that to be true?
Yes, absolutely. I was going to say, actually, I do one of my programs when I do one-on-one, although it can work with groups as well, but one-on-one, it's I do a leadership legacy program journey over 8 sessions with executives. And actually pretty early on, I do a session with them, which is around who am I? And we look at their journey in life. And it's quite a profound session because I ask them to describe their life in any way that means the most to them, and some of them will bring pictures in, and it's the first time really they've had a reflection on their life, and it's quite moving. It gives me a sense of who they are and where they're coming from. But the second session I then do with them is actually called, what do I value, and how do I get in touch with this self, with who I truly am. So what I do actually is then having learned a bit from on the first session, I actually then lay out what I call a real offering of having an experiential session with them. So we have all of these practices which they can either try there or they can take out. So, they can then start seeing and go, oh my goodness, I can actually do something that's about, I don't know, reading, inspired texts or I can do some singing in respect of Taizé and community, or I can actually, as you said, do yoga, Tai Chi, I can honor the body, or I can just actually be in solitude somewhere, or I can be out in nature. I can be doing walking meditation. I can do some artistic interpretation, including mandalas. And there's so many different things that they can actually do. And just to highlight it, one of the clients that I worked with, when we did all of this, he said, do you know what? He said, I've always enjoyed singing, but I don't know how spiritual that is. And I kind of looked at him and I said, oh, it is definitely, that's not definitely spiritual. And a synchronicity had happened to me in that I'd met someone who was deeply spiritual woman, also a singing teacher. And I think it was for the next session I had with him, and this is pre-COVID, so it was in person, I paid for her to come along and do part of the session. So she did a singing session with him, showing him how to center himself and to sing before he went to an important meeting. I tell you what, Jude, he said at the end of the session, he said, my God, he said, that's the best session we've done so far. No, I didn't deliver that, but I brought her in to actually do that. And he still tells me, because I'm in touch with him, and said, if I'm going out somewhere I can sing in the back garden or in nature, it connects into me. But singing is what brings me presence. So actually, because he's using breath when he's singing, but when he sings, he says, well, actually, then I'm ready. I'm ready to go in, and it's really done something to move the energy within me. And I absolutely got that. And I love that. So it's that sort of thing, you find the practice or practices that really speak to the leader you've got in front of you. If there's a team of leaders, there might be a number of practices, and actually just then encourage them to do it. It can be as simple, Jude, as, Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Zen Buddhist, will just talk about, he just weaves practices beautifully into the workplace. So, just say, actually do a little bit of mindful meditation as you're walking, again, pre-COVID, as you're walking from one meeting to the other. Or he might say, if your cell phone is ringing, just take a couple of breaths before you answer it, so you're present for the call. And he's got a whole book full of these things, and you're kind of thinking, do you know what? It's already here. Like you're talking about washing dishes, and that's a classic kind of Brother Lawrence Christian thing of, actually, I wash the dishes so I'm present with God. It's just actually, well, in the workplace, I can use the same sort of thing. And what if I treated every person, that came to my desk in the office, or in these days on a Zoom meeting, what if I really gave them my full attention, as if I was receiving someone who is of a saintly presence, or someone who I really honor and respect? How would that relationship then transform? And that's a pretty profound statement, but it's all, at the end of the day, it's a presence. It's being present, isn't it? It's practicing the presence. It's meeting that person with honor. And if you think sometimes in our classical working places, and you gave one example, from the government one, but in our classic one, how often people can feel I'm dismissed or I'm not listened to. What would it be like for people to actually be listened to and understood, and their talents actually valued in the workplace? I'd suggest it would be absolutely transformational, and the well-being impact, let alone, I think, the impact on creativity and profitability, would just work together hand in hand. And that's my experience. And that's why I'm passionate about this work.
Fantastic. I'm so excited to continue our conversations. I've learned so much and been able to share a lot of things that I kind of forgot about, and they've brought me back into this everyday practice of raising my consciousness and awareness about what am I doing, So I invite all of us to be a little more introspective about how we're managing ourselves, how we're managing our lives, and especially in the workplace, because so much of us spend so much time there.
And Jude, just before we bring this to a close, it would be amiss of me if I didn't ask you to just highlight that you're doing a free live webinar on Sunday, March the 21st, a self-care reset for the wellness professional, freedom from your disorder life, restore your balance through Tai Chi. Please say a little bit about that, because I'm sure there'll be people watching and listening to this who'd be interested in that.
Thanks. Just a quick snippet. This is a little kind of an hour encapsulation about Zero Point Tai Chi and going into using a practice to raise our awareness, to raise our ability to connect with our own energy center, and to bring release, relax, ease, and calm back into our lives. This applies to work and everything, everything. So I'm going to share a little bit about what this really means, and we're going to do a little 20-minute practice session to try to invoke some of that and have some time for questions about what is Zero Point Tai Chi really, and how is it different from just anybody else's instruction out there. There's lots of people offering Tai Chi and Qigong, especially today after COVID. Doing stuff online is just so much more easy. But I'll just say this last thing, that what I really love to share is the internal aspect and kind of the secret Tai Chi right away. That there's what I've learned is that a lot of people practice Tai Chi for years and years and decades, and then all of a sudden they discover the magic of Tai Chi and Qigong. And I'm really compelled to download the goodies the first time that I work with somebody. I love when people have that aha, that, oh my gosh, I could do a physical practice where I can feel that energy flow and feel that. I would love it if people could have a Satori experience after 10 minutes of just opening that door. And a lot of instructors have criticized that in the past. They said that people, need to get to some certain level before they can get this instruction, and I don't believe that that's true. I think we all are really born with this connection, and we just have put a bunch of wet blankets over ourselves. And what would it be like to uncover that, like that? And so that's what I'm going to be talking about on Sunday, March 21st, and then my 12-week program after that. It's going to be the put it into everyday practice. Once a week we'll get together and for an hour and 15 minutes, and we'll talk about nature and how that really helps us too.
Sounds wonderful. So I'm sure you'll stick your links below this video so that people can follow that up.
Thank you, David.
And of course, even if people can't make the session, they can get a recording of the session, can't they?
That's correct. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And what you have a new program coming up. Tell us about that briefly.
Really, what I'm looking to do at the moment, I did do. We launched a session on a masterclass, really involving conflict or anger in the workplace. And there's a full spectrum of anger. But what I'm looking to do at the moment is actually, I've kind of widened that to talk about the emotions and kind of relational intelligence in the workplace and getting results through relationships, because I think it's just so important, the power of relationships. So really, and at the moment I'm specifically looking for, it could be any small company, any company, but if there are kind of accountants that are out there, their teams are forever forming and disbanding as they get to different clients. And I did train as a chartered accountant, as did my partner in this area, Rashmir. So we really love to work with firms of chartered accountants. Maybe there's a team in a firm of chartered accountants that says, actually, I'd like to have a conversation with David and just see how they can work with us online in this COVID time to really help us thrive as a team, deliver the results, unleash our creativity, and actually have the benefit, as you were talking of there, of increased well-being. So those are interested, you can just find me on LinkedIn, David Wetton, WETTON, or just drop me an email to david@davidwetton.com.
Excellent. So glad you're doing that work. Well, I look forward to more of these. This is really fun. I love talking about everyday life and how to incorporate, how to do it better. And so we'll close for today, and I look forward to visiting with you soon, David. Thank you very
Right.
much.
Thank you, Jude.